Welcome to the show. My name is Sam-Erik Ruttmann, and this is a show that will take you around the world to meet different leaders in the part of the hospitality industry and discuss about the future and issues facing them at the moment. Welcome again. If you're watching this as a replay viewer, you're also very, very warm welcome. I know that maybe the timing might be the best for you. If you are watching us at the replay, of course we are on YouTube and on LinkedIn. You can see as a replay. And on YouTube, at the end of this show, I have a link to a very exciting show that we have done also. So that gives you a insight of other part of the trends that we see in the hospitality. Now, before I bring in my guest, I want you to just write in your name and where you are viewing from, or just where you are viewing from, and give us a thumbs up because that will help the algorithm to lift up our show today. So really appreciate that. So have you thought about hospitality? What are the things that are most important to you? I know that during this 2020, very few had any chance to travel. That it has been more of a wanderlust in your mind where you are planning and you are doing virtual travel and so on, but we have that urge that's inherent to us as a human being throughout the history. So I wonder if you write in your comments what are the places that you enjoy visiting and what are your plans. So, and also if you have any questions or any comments that you want to bring up here, please write them in the comments and I'll make sure that we are addressing with our guest. So let's start the show here. We have a few who have joined us, so thank you very much for joining. And I will bring my guest in here, and that is Willem van Bolderen. Hello, Willem. I think you need to unmute your microphone.
Apologies, I did it again.
It's okay.
I was on mute indeed. So I was listening to you and listening to your introduction and I forgot to unmute myself. But yeah, so nice to join your show and happy to be here and talk about hospitality and architecture in general.
Yeah, I think that architecture forms such an integral part of our experience wherever we stay in hotels, and we may not pay attention to it immediately, but because there's so much thought in creating something for people to experience something which is bigger than themselves, and the framework which is around that experience is not only the soft values which is created by a hotel and their fantastic staff, but also that experience when you see the building from outside, and so you can anticipate what you will see. Are those things that go through your mind when you are, even as not designing yourself, but you're looking at things? Because I watch you on Instagram, you like to take pictures of different buildings, so it must be some sort of inspiration.
Well, I think like what you were just mentioning, indeed, like the experience that we have as travelers or as guests, I think that's very important. And none of these can be seen by themselves. So it's not just a building or great food, it's where these things come together. So a combination of the environment, which can be beautiful nature or a city that you're staying in combination with architecture that amplifies that experience and, for example, also amplifies the food through lighting, through atmosphere, and by staff, of course, as well. So if you have really personal attention from staff, but you're in a kind of like sterile, clean, huge environment, then those things cannot go together. So it's really a combination of architecture with all the other aspects of hospitality. And I would say that I'm an architect myself, and of course that's what our office does. But we don't yes, we design buildings, but that's not the primary goal. We actually design an experience, and a building is one means to get there. So the first thought is like, what experience do we want to create? And what building would be suitable to deliver that message in a way?
Yeah. Now that's a good bridge for you to give some insight of Studio Puisto Architects and how you stand out to other architectural firms, and also about the values and design philosophy. So it would be interesting to hear what you have to say, as you're part of the one of the partners and also one of the founders of the firm.
Yeah. So Studio Puisto Architects. So we're an architecture office based in Helsinki, Finland, but we operate globally. We are specialized in hospitality, so hotels, resorts, retreats, spas, and some private housing as well. We design it from both the master plan, the architecture, and the interior design. So we do it all the way, and then we work with consultants from the industry to also tie in marketing, for example, or food experience, or lighting, etc. So we work on the full set of design challenges when talking about hospitality.
How does it start? I mean, when you either are contacting a developer or you are being contacted, what is the discussion starting from, and how does it develop to that you're starting to sketch out the feel and what you want to create for them?
Yeah, it's a good question, and actually in hospitality there are several partners that could be our client, and that would be our first point of contact. Of course, there's the property developers that are thinking of creating a hotel, and then the operator might be unknown. We also contacted by operators. We have, for example, some long-term relationships with some of the major operators where we in a way take care of all the properties. One of them is a part hotel operator, and another one is a hotel operator. It can also be that it's somebody who really dips the first, starts their first hotel project, and then it might be an operator / owner, and then they're really personally involved. So there's really different types of clients, and of course with different requirements as well. And we are there to extend and create their business with them. So we are listening really carefully to what the client is wishing for, and then see how our expertise can build on their expertise and really create a new business, but also business prosperity to the client.
What do you see how are you standing out? I mean, Finland is famous for a lot of architectural firms and great architects, and also internationally some fantastic architects around the world. Where do you see yourself? How do you stand out when the developer has a choice of a list of architects which are all better than the other one? But where do you see your differentiating point to when the developer has to make a choice?
Yeah. I think we are actually very good in taking the characters and the qualities that are already on the site and extending them. So to really amplifying, for example, natural beauty or this urban setting. And if you're planning on really building a unique experience, I think we are really the right team for that. Also because we have the expertise both from master planning all the way to the interior, so we can integrally design the project. Another thing that is really close to our heart is the sustainable value. So we're not only building for the here and now, but we're also building for future generations. And buildings outlast us in most cases. They last longer than a human. So and that's a story that also has to be told in hospitality, and that's very close to our hearts, and that we try to integrate into all the projects.
I mean, that's very good. I mean. Being myself in the hospitality work all my working life, I felt really it was sometimes very difficult, because I could see that it was it was a non-sustainable business I was in. When I looked at how the hotel where I sometimes worked has been built for profit, and it was just meant to, because the location is great and there's a big demand for people coming, and no wastewater treatment plants, and also concrete was basically the material that everything is being used, and a lot of things have now changed in a way that the customers or travelers are thinking. There is that we talk about the millennial travelers, and where the values of not only the location but also where they're going to stay, and they make some choices and they ask some hard questions that what do you stand for. And I think that's where one of the things why I wanted to talk to you is because I think you are bringing something very interesting to the table about the values you are representing. I like that idea. You are already done some fantastic work over up in Arctic Lapland, where you pay attention to the nature, because it takes so many years. If you touch something, you break something, that will take a long time before that becomes whole again.
Well, that's actually a good example also for the way we work, because of course, if you go to Lapland, you go there to experience the nature, and you go there to experience, in a way, like how we set out with the project, is we want to have this feeling of being at the end of the world, like the world would be flat and you're going to drop off if you walk a few kilometers further. And how to amplify that feeling of like remoteness, of in a way loneliness. And loneliness sounds like a negative emotion, but it's actually a very powerful emotion, I think, if you can hit the right tone. And at the same time, as you said, like nature in the Arctic is very fragile. Trees are very, very slow growing. So if you would have a massive construction going there, and you would dig in the ground, not only would you ruin that very sensitive nature, but it is also not very good for the operations of the hotel, because the first guests that would arrive when the hotel opens, they would be basically in no man's land, or kind of a ruined site that would take tens of years to recover. So I think it's both from a sustainable point of view, how we develop the project, but also from the customer's point of view, as to being able to, like, even the guests that arrive there on day one, that they would have exactly the experience that was designed for them and is similar to the one that would be there in 10 years. So nature was left untouched, trees were left on the spot. All the soil that we removed from the bottom of the forest, we placed on the top of the roof of the building. So basically no square meter of green was lost. And that's not only a sustainable aspect, but it's also a business aspect, as it helps with the operations and with the customer experience.
Yeah. How does your idea, philosophy of design travel outside Nordic? For instance, now I love the smell of wood, and I know you're an expert on wood and how to use wood in architecture and so on. But how does it translate when you are taken to a desert location, or you're going to some location which is very different from our Four Seasons? It's a really good point, and of course, like we are very Nordic office in a way in our values, but I think that doesn't mean that all our buildings are built for a Nordic climate. Like thinking about the desert, for example. Like it wouldn't maybe make sense to fly in wood from elsewhere in the world, but look at the local materials that are available. Plus the climate and the environment has, of course, different challenges that in for example, United Arab Emirates versus Finland. And then it's about finding the right match between materials and solutions and building up that experience. And I don't think it's so much set into the material or the architecture, but it's about the approach to the project, the stages that we go through. And for example, in the UAE, there's a beautiful tradition of rammed earth, and rammed earth is able to absorb heat, but also to release heat during the evening. So it's able to make an indoor climate that is much more stable throughout the seasons and throughout the day and the night, because the nights can be quite cold, whereas the days are, of course, pretty hot. And that's also renewable. It doesn't take much energy versus concrete, for example. So there are a lot of technologies and knowledge around the world that we would like to tap into and turn into a contemporary, forward-looking version of what used to be there. Yeah, I mean, most people think about Finland as sauna, so it doesn't mean that every room has to. You don't need a sauna in every room, but it just translates the philosophy of the way we are thinking about and how you are thinking about your way of designing.
But actually, can I build on that? Because the sauna, of course, what it is, it's a very, very hot room, and what makes a sauna nice is because it's very hot. And then you step outside where it's very cold. So it's that contrast between warm and cold that makes it a unique experience. It's a shock as well. It's like you're sweaty and hot, and then you step outside. It might be -10, or you might even jump into a frozen lake in a way, or to like a hole in the ice. And we do translate that to abroad as well. It doesn't mean that we take the sauna everywhere, but this contrast is very important in our project. So not everything needs to be grandiose, big marble, gold. It's luxury comes with transitions and with contrast. So you could have a very dark, small entrance that you almost like would say the feeling of kind of you have to dive down and step into a space. And then the space after that reveals itself and opens up to nature. And that second space wouldn't be as beautiful if it didn't have that transition point from the darker, lower space in the beginning. So it's really about transitioning from one area to another and to create a contrast in between these two. And you already mentioned the Arctic Treehouse Hotel up in Lapland. But there, the lobby is in one building with the restaurant, then you have to travel through the outside to get to your room. And of course, there could have been a corridor as well, and probably that would have been more comfortable, and it's easy to drag your luggage through a corridor rather than through the snow. But because you have to step outside, you can feel this cold and the climate there, and maybe it is a bit of a struggle with the luggage. Of course, staff will help you, but anyway, it's like once you then enter your room, you really feel in this cocoon of luxury, of warmth, of comfort. And it's exactly because you had to go through the outside, through the dark, that makes it extra rewarding to arrive into the room. And I think this is not so much a criticism to my colleagues who do hospitality projects, but a lot of hotels around the world are done in the same way. And you step into a stunning lobby, you're introduced at the desk, but then you disappear into kind of an anonymous elevator through an anonymous corridor, and then you end up into the room, and you've kind of lost the customer in between there from this beautiful lobby to this beautiful room. Like you should orchestrate what happened in between there as well. And of course, if a hotel is located in nature, there's aspects that you can use, but the same can be done in urban settings or in high-rise. Opening up views, playing with sound, with smells, with temperatures, so you can create an experience throughout the route of the guests and really build an experience everywhere and not just on a few spots.
Does wood architecture work for urban environment? I always thought it would be in distant or in resort environment. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so maybe it's interesting to introduce it. So I'm a founding partner of Studio Puisto Architects, but I also teach at the Helsinki University of Technology as part of the wood chair, so timber architecture. And traditionally, of course, wood has been mainly used for low rise, and that's been for fire reasons, so fire regulations. And in high rise, there are some issues when using wood. But there's been some really interesting developments, both in fire protection, but also in engineered wood products. For example, CLT, cross-laminated timber, is a serious contestant for concrete, and we can build high-rise in CLT. And wood is actually, it's pretty good if you think of the structural integrity of a building throughout a fire, because the coal layer protects the wood. And buildings made of wood are able to withstand fire for a very long time. The main issue is with escape routes, etc. And also there the technology has advanced, and we can offer safe escapes also in high-rise and medium-rise and in urban settings. So I would definitely say that wood is going to be an important part of our future building stock, because it's from a renewable material. It's very sustainable. And at the same time, it can actually store CO2. So it can actually be a climate positive building. Whereas if you think of cement or concrete, for example, you need to burn the caulk that needs super high temperatures. You have to burn gas to create concrete. And then the question is, what do you do with the concrete afterwards? There's actually not much use for concrete after the building life of a building is over. Whereas a wooden building, even let's say after 50 or 100 or 150 years, you would say this building has no need anymore. You would be able to recycle the wood and reuse it as a raw material for the next building.
Yeah. Interesting. I want to move over then to something very interesting that I've been following. It's called the Space of Mind cabins. Just for a little bit, in our video before our discussion, I showed the video, and it was a contrast between going to a Mediterranean resort with large beaches, a lot of umbrellas, and there's a lot of sun deck chairs, and then you end up in a very pure natural environment for a walk, and then you fly by this very interesting looking building. Could you share about what's the idea with this? Is that something that came up now because of the COVID-19, or something that you guys have been thinking about, something that you have thought about before, or what is just give us about principle on this?
Yeah, it's actually a combination of both. I think COVID definitely triggered it because of course, we all love to travel. We all like new experiences, and then and be on unique places around the world. And unique places, they don't always have to be on the other side of the world. They can also be close to your house, and you might not realize that they even existed. But how do you stay on those places? So it was definitely born from in springtime from COVID, and we thought, okay, how can we make a mini space that could basically be placed anywhere and offer a high quality experience, architectural experience in close relationship with nature. The second thought that we had when we did this project, because basically we didn't do this for a client, but we developed this internally, but it definitely came from client wishes, because there's a lot of people that have a love for hospitality and would maybe even like to start their own hospitality operations. But we all know that you need a certain amount of key to be profitable, to have high enough efficiency, and that has rendered a lot of locations not suitable for hospitality, just because the amount of keys are not there to make it a profitable business. So we looked like, okay, how can we make these places anyway accessible and make it as low on operations as possible, so it would be able to, like with a low key count, so let's say 5 or 10 units would be enough to run a mini resort or a mini bed and breakfast on a unique spot somewhere in the world. And that can be, like, there's been great initiatives from clients, so from national parks to islands that are uninhabited at the moment, to yoga retreat in Saudi Arabia, where they would use these as yoga condos. So clients really have picked these up and kind of used this space of mind as a base to expand their own dreams and to venture in new directions.
Oh, very interesting. Now, some people have said that our world will change more in the next 10 years than it has done in the previous 100 years. What do you see the kind of looking ahead? Because now you mentioned that the space of mind, the cabins, and the whole concept is something that has been catching on. What else do you see that might be in the pipeline that and particularly has maybe been in the people's mind, but now it's been triggered because of the situation, I don't want to use the word normal because it's not a good word anymore, but the changes that has happening. What else do you think is going to affect?
And I think, like, of course, people rise up from crisis, and I think we could describe the last year as somewhat of a crisis, because it has shaken the status quo, and of course there's been terrible side effects from Corona, and the mental and physical damage that it has done to people is tremendous. But it has also created maybe some sort of opportunity to realign and readjust, and to think like, are all the routines that we have in life, are they the right ones? And I think that's been really interesting, and that not only in hospitality but also in architecture. And for example, the climate crisis is one other one that is coming up, and how as professionals can we react to that and participate positively rather than negatively. About those changes like that are coming up in the next 10 years, I think there's going to be a different way of working and traveling. So these things are going to blend, and that's already happening, and that's going to accelerate over the coming few years. So hospitality will have to be adjust to that and adapt to it, and have to be more resilient in a way. So flexibility, I think, is going to be a really important part of the way forward, both in hospitality and in architecture. Yeah. I also see huge opportunity there because, of course, the computer has been used in architecture for a long time, but now we could actually go even further with standardization, but not standardization as we did it in the 60s, where everything starts to look the same. We can standardized to customized. So a blend of unique architecture, but with the use of computer-aided design and artificial intelligence. So that's really something that's going to lift off in the next 10 years. And Space of Mind is actually a fun example of that, because it's built by a furniture company rather than a construction company, and it's completely cut by robots, and it almost goes together as a Lego. And actually, for that robot, it doesn't really matter what it's cutting. It can cut the same thing, or it can cut something different. It's not complaining. It's not has to relearn the thing. So it would be quite easy. Like at the moment, they're all the same. We just changed the cladding, but a very easy next step would be to design it such that we can input different lengths, heights, width, and the robot just adjusts the drawing and cuts it again. So it wouldn't take the manual labor in between to redesign it all the time, but we could actually use the computer to help us develop that. And that also frees up some space from the designers, but also from the operations, for example, to focus on the things that are even more important. So customer experience, amenities, but also excursions, etc. So I think that I don't see it like it's a huge challenge, but it's a positive challenge, and happy to take that forward.
Well, I think we will do another episode, particularly about the Space of Mind cabinet. It's such a huge topic, and we can go in great depth about what is the impact for circular economy and etc. But I suggest we leave it at that for now. I have a question here from Chris Franzen, fellow hotelier. He asking a question. Let's see. I'll pop it on the screen here. How can we influence big corporate hotel chains to change the mindset of developers to build in a more sustainable manner?
Yeah, I think that's of course always like the bigger corporations, they move slower, and there's seeing positive examples would of course be one way to show them, but also we shouldn't underestimate that the guests want change as well. And also the big corporations, they're ultimately there for their guests. So guests are able to distinguish between a genuine sustainable building or greenwashing, or let's say don't wash your towel. I don't say that that's not important, but those are all minimal changes. So I think we shouldn't underestimate the guests, and if they don't do it now, they're going to be, they have to catch up later on, and they might be too late. So I would suggest to all the bigger corporations to take sustainability serious. Development goes rather slow. So if you don't start now, you might be like one of the last ones. So if it doesn't happen through customer demand, it will happen by government regulations. So we better embrace it and go for it for the full 100% than to try to resist.
Yeah, I think you made two very important points. One is that the customer demand is one of the drivers for change also, and they simply have a choice now. And then if it doesn't fit what their values are, then they will say, "Well, I'm not gonna. I don't want to. I don't like to invest in this," because now there are some key questions people are asking when people are talking developers or hotel brands. What does your brand stand for? Who is behind the brand, and what are your values? And why should I invest in this brand? You know, these are questions being asked these days, and if it doesn't answer the questions that really resonate with me, then we'll say, well, I go where people are taking care of things the way I think things should be taken care of.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, this question comes really often, and everybody sees sustainability always as an added cost, and it doesn't have to be. So there's of course some technology that that costs, but there's also a lot of like smart design, thinking it through. Does the room have to be as big as you're suggesting? Do we need the same temperature throughout the building? Is the orientation correct? Do we have a problem with overheating or with places being too cold? So there's a lot of decisions and choices throughout the design process, and also throughout operations, that would save massively, and they don't have the cost. They actually generate money. And we should look not so short term to only plan for the next 5 years, but if you look at 20, 30 years, then a lot of these actually would actually generate money just because you reduce the energy consumption of a building, for example, or the waste of a building, or the waste of food in your F&B operation. So a lot of these are they need a conscious thought rather than just doing business as usual. There's of course some technologies that require an extra investment, and arguably you could even get that money back with the marketing impact of those investments. But I think like Airbnb has been a good example of this. Like they challenged the existing hotel operators, and there's more and more apart hotels coming up, or hotels like adjusting to kind of the experience that Airbnb is giving them. So also there it shows that sooner or later the industry will change, and I would encourage all the bigger operators to be on the forefront of it rather than dragging on the back.
Yeah, good. Willem, let's talk about you a little bit. And if you look back at 2020, what has been your personal biggest accomplishments?
Yeah,
we want you to share about you now.
Yeah, it's been interesting, like both from a family perspective and of course also from a business perspective. Is we used to meet each other every day, work at the office, collaborate. The same goes at home, and then suddenly, we were all working from home, and we had to readjust. And it also, I think, and we've experienced this all, I think, is that the tremendous flexibility in people to be able to adjust and to take the most positive out of kind of something that started off as a negative impact on us. And I think a lot of fresh ideas were born from that as well. And we also see that among our customers and partners, that to embrace the change and see, okay, how can I give this a positive twist? How can we come out of this stronger together? And that's been both on a personal level in a way and on a business level. And then also, like, of course, our biggest project is the office itself. And also there we've really come together as a team, found new ways of collaborating, and in some ways maybe even more positive because of this. Of course, we're all looking forward to be all together in the office again, but I think we also realized that we, like, the things how we did it are maybe not always perfect, and this has given us a good chance to realign, check what is important, and focus on those.
Yeah. My final question is, what have you learned about yourself during the pandemic period? Something that, revelation, what have you learned about yourself?
I've rediscovered some personal joys in life. So, for example, you spend more time at home, and I've always, as a kid, I wanted to become an inventor. And because of work life and family, of course, that was pushed to the back. And now I did give myself a bit more free time. There's also not the commute to work anymore. There's less traveling. So I've taken up some old hobbies that really give me a lot of joy, and at the same time gives me time to experiment on projects for clients as well. So that's been really nice, and to find those moments of joy. And I think one other thing that is maybe related to the topic that we have here is that the beauty is really close by. So you don't have to go far to have a change of scenery, and that can be from your own garden, or changing your workspace from the living room to your workroom to the toilet, let's say that way. So there's some beauty in everything, but it also it might be to like last summer we rented a boat, went to an island with a tent with my wife and my daughter. We were literally 14 kilometers away from home. And it felt like we were in Croatia, and we took food, we prepared it there, we made a fire. And I would say the experience is if you can capture that as a hospitality operator, that's something unique, and those are things that to treasure. That's something really that I've learned more over the last few years. If you see the amount of flights that I did in 2019 versus last year, I think it was a reduction by 99%, but the amount of experience maybe have stayed the same.
Yeah. Very good. Well, thanks very much, Willem. I think it's been a great discussion, and we have Chris Francén gave that question, which I appreciate. Thank you very much, Chris, for joining the live show and giving and also posting that very good question. And I think that we will close this episode, and we are definitely coming back with about more of a talk about, and we'll dive deeper into the space of mine cabins topic. And now for all the viewers, then I'm having another video coming up. If you're watching the replay, you will see up here, somewhere here, I think you will see it, the text. It is about the dining trends. So worthwhile to, at the end of this video, to click that button in YouTube, and you will see then interesting discussion about where we see the hotel dining moving, and because there's a lot of things that are changing, like the ghost kitchens and takeaways is just the one of the things, but there are so many more that going on in the industry. But Willem, it has been a great discussing with you, and we'll catch up with you very soon again. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Sam-Erik, and looking forward to continuing the discussion.